everybody. Welcome to the Partnership Playbook. I am your host, Guillermo, and I am thrilled to start this series of podcasts, the first one ever. This is a series of podcasts where we will have interesting and experienced guests that would help us tackle all the important topics around successful partnerships. Today, I'm especially thrilled, not only because it is the first episode, because I get to interview a longtime friend and colleague, Mark Harmon, who is joining us today. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, Guillermo, for having me on your very first podcast. I've been in this industry a long time. We've worked together for a long time. We've been friends for a long time. So I feel very honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Very, very nice to have you here. And just to give just a little bit about myself, we've known each other for quite a while. I have been in the industry for 21 years. That's a number that always catches me off guard because time flies when you're having fun and when you love what you do. I begun in 2004 in teleperformance as we opened up the El Salvador site, moved across various geographies, many of those geographies partnering with Mark and his programs. And actually, that took me all the way to Costa Rica during the pandemic. Right after that, I pivoted to a brand new role and actually away from teleperformance and joined World Connection, where I am the chief operating officer and have been for the last 4 years. Actually, right behind me, that is beautiful Guatemala, what you see. So, Mark, what's new with you?
Well, I am just behind you. I've been in the industry now for 18 years, which feels like maybe 180 years sometimes. It is a shocking number as well. Like many, I didn't plan on getting into the customer care world. I certainly didn't grow up wanting to be a customer experience professional. I wanted to be a rock star or maybe an astronaut or something cool like that. But nevertheless, here we are all these years later. And I started on the BPO side when I first got into just doing tech support, and then moved over a few years after that into the client side, where I have done lots of years now, 14 years or so of vendor management. And so that's really sort of where my career has taken me. I have the privilege of being able to look at this industry from both sides, which I think will be helpful as we talk through what partnership is really all about and how we can make an impact on our industry and take our performance to the next level. Speaking of which, what's most new with me is I recently published my very first book called Making a Lasting Impact, the Rockstar Performance Method. And so I'm really excited to talk about that today, some of the concepts and principles that are in the book, things that I've learned over 30 years, 40 years of my life, but even more so over the last 18 years in this industry and how I've been able to develop a system that really helps people drive sustainable, lasting results. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about it, talk about how we can take performance to the next level.
Excellent. Well, I'm very excited for you. I'm sure the book is going to be very interesting, and especially with all those different topics woven into the mix. So true about the whole rock and roll theme, because we always refer to it, this individual is the rock star of the team. And maybe that's what dates us a little bit because we say, well, a rock star is the epitome of like the top of what you could be. So, Mark, diving into this, and perhaps before we do that, one thing that perhaps our viewers who don't know us would care to know is that we've had when I was in teleperformance, we went through a period on. I think we worked together for a at least a good 8 to 12 years on a program, and eventually I moved away to Costa Rica and then moved out of teleperformance. But throughout this whole journey, we always kept the conversation alive. And I think that that's where this friendship, blossomed into just colleagues being able to say, well, why is the industry going in this direction? Should it be going in this direction? And are we better off for it? So speaking of that, um, what how has that shaped your approach to performance management?
as as we've gone through, I mean, over the many years we've been in this industry, I think the first thing that we're always focused on is how do we drive the best performance? And
True.
maybe it's a metric, or maybe it's, more focused around customer experience. And we've certainly seen this shift from a lot more metric focused to a lot more customer focused. I mean, we've seen that throughout the industry because we all know that there's opportunity to take this whole industry to the next level. Technology is going to help us do that, but it starts and ends with how do we interact with our customers and how do we treat our customers. And so, as we've watched this transition or this evolution in our industry, I think the thing that constantly we kept coming back to was, well, we can drive performance improvement, but how do we make it stick? We get
Yes.
these gains and then it regresses, and then we go back and get gains and then it regresses. And so this whole idea of a lasting impact really revolves around this concept that we can do the right things to drive sustainable change. And that's really sort of the heart of the book, I think, more than anything else. It's performance management is more than just chasing KPIs. It's getting to the root of our behaviors and actions, the things that are going to have the greatest influence on those outcomes. Because the metrics are outcomes. They're numbers, they're useful, they're helpful to understand where we're going. Is our business performing well or not, and so forth. But the reality is if we are focused on that, it's really hard to drive things sustainably because the system isn't there, the discipline isn't there. And so I really look at performance and have for a number of years, and it started really back talking with you and all those years ago, trying to get certain teams to improve their performance in a way that was sustainable. And this is where we started to understand that how behaviors influence outcomes. And if you really want to understand why a behavior exists, or why someone's performing a certain way, you have to do root cause analysis. And you got to dive into the psyche of the individual if you want to coach them through that and get them to another place of performance. And so that's really sort of how I've structured the book, but how I've really structured managing this business. And I've managed large scale teams, I've managed, multi-million dollar operations, and everything comes back to, if you want to move the needle and do it in a sustainable way, you got to change the behaviors and you got to do the right things consistently. So I've always put it this way: doing the right things produces the right outcomes. And that's really where we're focused. All of this work is around the structure that you can do over and over and over again. It's repeatable, it's specific, it's clear, it's every single step, every single time, so that you are focused on the right behaviors, focused on the right mindset, focused on the right coaching strategy, focused on the right actions, and then you're focusing and then you're measuring the effect of those things to determine, did it work the way we wanted or not, and then what do we need to go back and adjust.
I remember those conversations, and especially how we spent a lot of time addressing what variation we had from QBR to QBR, for example. And what is it Predictable already where we are going to be. And thinking back on those days, and now with all the experience and this reflection that which undoubtedly came with this book and putting it all together, from your perspective, what makes the difference to you for a BPO that is truly making an impact in a partnership versus a BPO that is just surviving, or perhaps that's too tough of a term, but just let's just say ticking boxes. You know,
Yeah,
you're just meeting the bare minimums. What do
right.
you think is the difference?
I think the first difference is, and I said it once and I'll say it again. The first, it starts with the right mindset. If a BPO is coming in and they're in the mindset that they're a service provider and their whole objective is just do what the client says and hit the numbers, that everything that they do is going to revolve around, am I doing what the client said? Am I hitting the numbers? And no matter what we do, we've got to do those two things. And what I've learned through my almost 20 years now is that mindset is actually focused on the wrong thing. That is not going to drive impact. It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be forward thinking or innovative or creative because it's reactive. It's always waiting for the customer to the client to tell you what to do and then go try to execute and you hope you hit the number. And and the reason why I am so adamant and passionate about this is because most clients actually want more strategic partners than just service providers. Not everybody operates this way. I know there are certain clients who just have a very prescribed formula and that's all that they really want out of their providers. But as this business has evolved, it's evolving rapidly and the client side, we can't necessarily keep up with all of that. So strategic partnerships really matter. The second part, so beyond the mindset, it's about commitment to a disciplined system. And this is where it gets a little bit challenging, I think, for a lot of BPOs because everybody's coming into the business. Let's say you have a new relationship. You're coming in with all of your experience and you know how to move the needle and maybe you've had a lot of successes and you're trying to bring that in and use those skills, which is fantastic. And that's part of a strategic partnership. However, if you don't, if everybody's not on the same page with the exact same model and method and approach, then you're going to get varying degrees of performance. That's true in an operation. That's true within a team, but that's also true if you're one of multiple outsourcers that are working with one client. And so what we've really focused on in my work, but also what the book really focused on is a consistent model, something that everybody can be trained on, everybody can see how all of the pieces connect, and everybody can execute those pieces. But can and will are two very different things. And
True.
so when I think about BPOs making an impact, the ones that have had the most success are using the system. They're completely bought in and committed to it, but they're also, once they're doing the system and seeing the results, now they can start to become more innovative and creative and start looking at the business other than just ticking the boxes and making sure the client is happy because we hit the metrics. It creates this entire culture of empowerment and critical thinking and oh we applied this model somewhere else in our business and we're seeing these fantastic results. It's the model's not that complicated and it's not even that groundbreaking, but it's the consistent execution of it that's the real difference maker, and that gets you completely out of that ticking the box because ticking the
Right.
box won't work. It's good analysis, it's root cause analysis, it's coaching effectiveness, and then it's effective action planning. Because if you're not doing those things, you're not going to produce the right results, and then you're not making the right impact.
I agree. And ultimately, there is very little assurance that you will always be able to tick the boxes. I mean, you may do that once, but who's to say if you will be able to replicate? So to give you a counterpart, like from my perspective, especially in my role at World Connection, so it doesn't begin from day one, obviously, because you need to, number one, get familiar, get a good understanding of what is the reason of that this client is outsourcing their business. What pain points are they hoping to solve? And as we do that, and we begin to understand, and we start to go beyond just let's review the scorecard every single week, which we do. And that's where we have to start. I mean, that's where that discipline and those operational rigors get settled. But that once you do that, then that's when you start going beyond and transition from just the provider to become that trusted advisor. And there's a certain amount of risk involved because you have to have a good enough relationship to be able to say, well, let me try new things. Why don't you let me do a pilot on this information that's coming from the front lines that is different on how we do things and see what we get. Sometimes it will work, sometimes we may not, but at least it's going to be moving us towards an evolving business and a partnership that is growing. Now, of course, I know that there's also the next question. Let's say that we are able to achieve those good results, but how do we make them sustainable from your perspective and in your experience over the various organizations where you've had your business?
Yeah, you hit on a couple of things, and I'll start with the trusted relationship, which we can talk about more in a little bit, but it's really important. There's two different philosophies that I've sort of come across and the client vendor relationship. In some cases, it's client service provider. Service provider's job is put the people on this in the seats at the time they're supposed to be there. Like we said, yeah, do the thing, get the results, and you'll earn more business. And it's very transactional. And there's another sort of approach which I actually think is way more effective, and that's building those really strong relationships. There's risk there because if it doesn't go well, then the relationship is more difficult. It's hard to have conversations or to break up with people if you have to, that you have really strong relationships with. However, the benefit far outweighs some of those risks because you're thinking about the business together. It's more collaborative. And so when we talk about sustainable results, I think the first thing is you've got to be able to have those honest, transparent conversations. If you're not being honest about your own performance, or we're not able to be honest about a provider's performance, and I don't mean brutally honest, but very transparent. Hey, this is not working. Hey, this account manager is not the right fit. Hey, from a BPO side, hey, client, we don't understand how you're measuring this particular part of the business, or we don't really know how to apply this particular concept or idea. That trust is the heart of the transparency. And it's no different than if you were having a conversation as a coach with an agent and you're trying to get to the root cause. Nobody's going to tell you they're afraid of customers telling you no in the first conversation, or at least in the beginning of that first conversation. You have to have a foundation of trust if you're going to be willing to open up about what those pain points and those struggles are and why they exist. When you start pouring your heart out and your heart into this business, your emotions into this business, trust is really important. So I spend time talking about that simply because if you want to drive something sustainable, you got to believe. You got to believe in what you're doing, and you got to believe in who you're doing the thing with. You got to have that relationship. That's really the glue that holds it together. But you got to believe in what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe it's missional, maybe it's a inspirational vision, or maybe it's just good old fashioned, support, and it's just helping customers. But no matter what, how you look at it, the belief is the heart of how are we going to do this? What I believe is, do I believe this is worth doing? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, now I can say, okay, how are we going to do it? And when I'm connected, the client and the provider are in sync, the how becomes much easier to execute because everybody's looking at the same set of data. Everybody's looking at the data the same way. Everybody is executing the structure. And that's the key to sustainability. So believe first, commitment second, and then structure third. And that's what I've, where the book I think can come in really handy for folks is because I actually give the structure that I've used in my own life and in my business to drive these sustainable results. And I will tell you, I have seen the best results over the last 2 years when we've done this way more consistently than we ever had in the past. We have seen the best results we've ever seen. Not because we're chasing results, because we're focused on doing the right things over and over and over and over and over again. And the right analysis, the right coaching, the right root cause analysis, the right action plan, and so forth, over and over. And it just makes the work so much easier. You know where to look. You can see it in the data because you're all looking at the data through the same lens. You know who to look
True.
at because you're already isolating the people who are having the biggest impact, positively or negatively. You know who to look at. Now we can go and dive into the behaviors. What are they doing that they need to do more consistently, or maybe they're doing some things they shouldn't be doing. We can now sit down and coach that and find out why they're doing it that way so that we can then help them develop an action plan to change. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about a frontline agent or if you're talking about your recruiting and your HR teams or your workforce or your analysts or your QAs, trainers, it doesn't matter. Everybody wants to produce good results in a sustainable way. The way you do that is through the disciplined execution of the structure, and it applies to anybody in your organization. And that's the key to sustainability. It's consistency and discipline to the right structure.
Would you say alignment is really what it boils down to make sure that everybody is on the same page in everything?
It
It,
certainly starts there. You have to have the right alignment if you're going to execute something consistently, because consistency requires that alignment. Otherwise, you have people executing various systems, and this gets a little tricky, particularly if you have, very experienced people like yourself. You're going to come in, you already have your performance management system in place. So now it's my job and my team's job to help convince you, hey, let's do our system because it's proven and it works. And you can use your skills and competencies and experience to make this work even better. But it's the system, so everybody's operating it the same way. And then when we find things that need to evolve, we evolve it, but we evolve it for everybody. So it's collaborative not only between client and partner, but we've actually created this system where it's collaborative between client and all of the partners. So everybody is on the same page. And that's where you start to be able to drive sustainable results at scale.
well, I am a believer. I can tell you that, ironically, the frustration, the tension of not achieving results, the wear and tear of working hard and the number is not moving in the right direction is a byproduct of not having that alignment. Mark, I think we've unpacked some very critical issues to what one could say is the secret sauce of a successful partnership. I know that on our next episode, we are going to dive in a little deeper to peel back the layers of those relationships and say, well, we've talked about the consistency, we've talked about the mindset, but there's certainly a lot more to it than just that. So I would like to thank all the viewers for being with us on this chapter one with Mark. And if you have any comments, any questions, any feedback for us, don't hesitate to write a comment, and we will do our best to give you answers and to give you practical answers. So, what has been our experience? And ultimately, I think that that's why this idea was so exciting for us both, because we could really put our experience out there for those who need it
Yeah.
and those who could find value on it. So thank you so much for being part of this first segment, and I will see you in chapter two.
Man, thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I really encourage folks, if this is something that you've been struggling with, maybe to really move the needle, or you feel like you're working really hard and you're not seeing the right results in your life or in your work, I encourage you check out the book. It's available on Amazon, and the link is there for you as well, and we'll put the link in the comments. I hope it's helpful for you, and if there's anything that we can do. I know I can speak for Guillermo here. Either one of us can do to help you or your organization. We're all about making an impact across this entire industry and making it better. So we're happy to help wherever we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this is the Partnership Playbook signing off for this chapter. See you soon. Stay tuned for our next episode.